Hi everyone, I'm Francesca Magnolo and I am a PhD student in the Department of Agricultural Economics in Ghent University. The study that I'm going to present to you today is my master thesis project, which actually I completed exactly 1 year ago at Chalmers University. In this project, I looked at the role of financial actors over a very complex product chain, the one of the Brazilian soybean. And the result of its complexity is exactly the landscape transformation which you can observe here on this picture, which makes this case particularly interesting for looking at actor network interactions and sustainable governance. But why to specifically look at financial actors, and how these relate to social life cycle assessment? In order to answer these questions, I will first give you some information on the relation between financial actors and product flows and the consequences of this relation on a global level. Then I will talk about the potential benefits of methodological pluralism for social LCA. I will then focus on the study case for the project, showing the integrative framework developed and tested for this specific case. And then I will conclude discussing the potential of this novel approach. So let's start with the question, why financial actors are so important? Financial actors, financial markets, and instruments play a huge role in the global economy. So their actions and interactions between each other and with other types of actors enable products to flow around the globe. And they're actually shaping their routes. So in a time of climate and sustainability crisis, it becomes crucial to understand these interactions and how they impact communities, companies, regions, households, which can be either the origin or the destinations of these flows. So recently there has been an increased academic and non-academic interest to explore the links between financial actors and environmental and social impacts. However, their influence is rarely considered in social life cycle studies, or in general using a life cycle perspective. So for example, this is a satellite picture of smoke coming from the fires in the Amazon. We all remember the huge media attention that these fires finally got last summer, but what has been usually communicated among the main causes is land grabbing, Bolsonaro's political plans to weaken environmental regulations, and increasing meat consumption in Western countries sometimes, which definitely are all elements that are contributing to clearing land in this important area of the planet. But without financial actors channeling their money and focus their interest in this area, there would be very little incentive to clearing land. However, very few times finance has been mentioned responsible for such social and environmental disasters. So it is very common that the public perception still sees financial actors as something remote, contributing indirectly to social and environmental impacts on a local and very concrete level. So, can social LCA be a tool to overcome this limited vision, and how? Today, according to the UNEP-CETA guidelines for social LCA, only stakeholders which have a direct contact with the product flow are considered, and financial actors seem not to properly fall in any of the 5 stakeholders categories indicated by the guidelines. But what if we included multiple social perspectives, including also other types of actors, such as financial actors? This would potentially allow to show a more realistic complexity of network interactions, uncovering new relationships between different actors and providing more perspectives and tools for advancing sustainability and a more sustainable governance of complex product chains. However, including these multiple social perspectives require more comprehensive and integrative approaches to the social study of life cycle. So the case that was chosen for developing and testing a social life cycle method to include both life cycle actors and other actors as well was the soybean case, chosen because of its huge sustainability and governance challenges. In particular, Brazil was chosen because home of 2 of the most important biomes on Earth, the Amazon rainforest and the Cerrado savanna, which in the last 30 years have been subject to extensive deforestation with environmental and social impacts on the millions of communities living in the area. The agricultural sectors, and especially the soybean sector, serving a huge number of global commodity chains, contributed to the deforestation process. But also, after the global financial crisis in 2008, investments in agricultural land by foreign investors in Brazil increased in the area, additionally contributing to the land clearing. So, for example, today only 10 foreign investors hold over 1 million hectares of Brazilian farmland. However, all the interactions and their development in the area that are leading to the deforestation process are both difficult and tracked to assess. And given the complex socio-ecological problems of the soybean product chain, current methods are lacking the ability of capturing the width of the problem for analysis and solution. So after a document study of the soybean case, an integrative framework was developed and tested, covering the actor network around the material flow by combining LCA, product chain organization, and the financial chain, so including social, technical, ecological, and financial information. A life cycle perspective was used, including actors close to the product flow as well as remote actors. The actors were mapped along the life cycle steps using the PCO methodology, and financial actors were also included, linking the relationship between different financial actors and their relationships with other types of actors at different levels for each step of the life cycle. Finally, a detailed description of the soybean chain using the framework was performed, and interviews with financial chain actors linked to Brazilian soybean agriculture were also held, and these actors were the Second National Swedish Pension Fund and its asset manager Nuveen. And these interviews were held in order to get an inside perspective on their role and their strategy for the soy chain. Three steps of the life cycle were studied in depth due to their link to deforestation in Brazil and ecological impacts. So moving on to the actual description for the first three steps, at a very local level, very close to the product flow, we find farmers and communities working in or close to farmland where soybean is cultivated, and the investment entities through which investors channel their money into these first three steps are, for the first step of agricultural land creation, agricultural funds, and production companies for agricultural production, and trading companies for processing and trading. The intermediaries between these very local actors and investment entities and foreign investors are asset management firms in all of the three different steps analyzed, and the majority of them are from the US. Their role is very similar in all the three different steps. Instead, the type of investors whose capital is managed by the asset management firms, symbolized by these small arrows on the top, differs among the three steps. So in general, we can say that financial governance differs for each life cycle step. Pension funds and endowments in the first life cycle step invest more in farmland with very large shares, while investors for the other two steps are of another kind, usually private investors, and own very small shares in production and trading companies. So the interactions in these two steps are minimal and only exist for investors to diversify their portfolio and for local actors to obtain capital. While in the first step, where the ownership shares are bigger, investors manage more directly and practically their local investments. So in terms of sustainable management, agricultural production and trading are more challenging life cycle steps because investors, which only have small shares of companies, do not really take responsibility for how local affairs are managed. And they are also subject to reputational risks to a minor extent. So in conclusion, the integrative methodology that included different type of actors, such as financial actors, and going beyond the UNEP-CETAC social LCA framework, provided new perspectives on how specific steps of the soybean product chain are financially managed. It enabled to explore different levels of network interactions and their characteristics, which is an opportunity to improve certain types of relationships to avoid social and environmental impacts on a local level. So it's also a way to help to build a more sustainable governance of product chains. And these product chains are actually becoming more and more complex to serve global commodity markets. So it's very important to find ways to explore this complexity. And as for soybean, the methodology could be applied to any other global commodity with huge sustainability challenges, like, for example, coffee, cocoa, or tea, to explore the complexity of interactions and the role of finance in driving social impacts on a local level. So thank you all for your attention, and I'll be happy to answer any question if you have some, and enjoy the rest of the conference.